for it.
No.
I had to pay for mine.
We were
Oh, no,
in the,
Oh, it works turning it on over there, so we're on.
Yes, we are.
we were in the,
Yeah, we might want to turn it off over there.
Or just turn it off here.
But then I have to turn it on over here, don't I? It's not on here.
Are we
It's on
filming
over
or?
there.
Turn it off.
Oh, yeah, I would go turn it off over
Okay.
there, so
Yeah.
and I'm the only one that's really properly dressed. We could all put our shirts on.
I know.
What do you mean properly dressed? That's Dixon Unified School District. We are a library board. Jewel?
I know that. I can wear this anytime I want.
Okay, well, I've seen blemishes, Jewel. Dear
It's still
Jewel,
on.
your grade's going down.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, we'll bring this meeting of the Dixon Public Library Board of Trustees to order. Do we have any comments before closed session? Seeing none, we'll go to closed session.
All right.
Okay, we're back from closed session. We have no announcements from closed session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, roll call. Everyone is present. Public comment. Persons wishing to speak to an agenda item may raise their hand during public comment. The library board president will recognize you for the discussion at the appropriate time. Speakers will provide their name to the library board, after which the speaker will have 5 minutes to speak. Notice to public. Any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda, may do so during the public comment period identified in this agenda. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none. Guests and presentations.
They will be presenting with item 11A.
Okay. Correspondence?
Yes, there is a funding letter from, for the E-rate. If you look at the letter, we applied for the E-rate and received a total commitment of $8,438.69. So that means that our computer, telephone bills will go down by that amount for this upcoming fiscal year.
Great.
Bills going down is always a good thing.
That's a
Yeah.
plus.
Okay, do we have any public comment on the funding letter? Seeing none. Consent agenda. Are there any board questions or comments on the consent agenda? Do we have, let's see.
The approval of the minutes.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of the, excuse me, we have a motion and second. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
sorry. Okay, information items. Boy, that sounds loud.
This item is, was brought forward last month. It's information only where the board asked how much our share would be on the unfunded PERS with the North Network of the North Bay Cooperative Library System. And so in years past, the North Bay Cooperative Library System has used its own fund balance to pay for the annual CalPERS obligations and the retiree health insurance. In fiscal year 18-19, which is this year, the costs were $32,165 for CalPERS and $650 for GASB, $14,500 for medical, and $1,257 for Medicare, for a total of $48,672. Next year, those costs are going up for a total cost of $91,192 for fiscal year 19-20. The estimated cost for 2021 is $93,602. And if you notice on page 12, it indicates, is it page 12? The amount that would remain for 2021, which the estimated ending balance is a negative 10,000. So on page 13 and 14, it indicates what Dixon's public library costs would be under the 5-tier cost share formula, under the 15-tier cost formula. And on page 15, it indicates the percentage of memberships dues that, for the unfunded liability. On page 16, it's the history of the membership of the North Bay Cooperative Library System, and all the names of the members that do not have an M or an X under member April 2019 are those that have not been participating in the cost for the CalPERS unfunded liability. The group will be getting together once again next month in June to discuss its next steps or options. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Okay, so did you say they're going to decide whether they discontinue?
The decision's going to be made whether to discontinue or to continue paying the unfunded liability, which is shared by the members that are currently, as of April 2019.
So they're paying that even for the current libraries that are not members?
Correct.
And so if every library has to pay their own funds, if they disband,
Their share of the fund. If the group disbands, then CalPERS will be speaking to all the individuals on here, and they would have to pay their own share, yes.
and then would our share go down at that point because we're no longer paying for the libraries that are not members, or how would that work?
I'm not positive. I would think that the amount would go down depending on how many members are in that category that have retired from the Dixon Public Library.
Okay, so depending on what they do, we will hear from CalPERS
Yeah,
as to
we'll
what.
hear from CalPERS.
Thank you. Okay, any questions about that from the board?
Nope.
Any public comment? Seeing none. Okay, where were we? On
10A.
10A, okay. Go ahead.
These are policies 3165, 3210, and 3220. The board asked for several minor changes to be made, and those changes have been made to the policies. If you look at unauthorized leave of absence, it was, one sentence was changed on 3165.1.1.1, which is, or 10 days from the date of issuance, whichever is earlier. Policy unlawful harassment was to move one of the sections where it made more sense. I believe that was 3210.6. We moved that below 3225.5.5. And then the equal opportunity was to do some spacing changes.
Okay, so substantively, 3220 didn't change, it was just
No.
cleaned up. Okay,
And that was just a discussion item. There's no need to,
and then we've got 3170 in there as well, but it's not listed on the, oh yeah, it is.
It is.
That's the sample, oh, we'll get to that, that's
It's
the
B.
sample, okay. So are there any questions about 10A? No, any public comment? No, okay. 10B?
okay. 10B again is is discussion, the performance evaluation. I was asked to bring forward samples of evaluations that had a rating plus a summary. So you'll see there's 3 samples on here. One of them, the first one is rating from 4 to 1, with 4 being high, and it lists the performance evaluation, and then overall, and then the reviewer's comments. The second one, pretty much all 3 pretty much outline the same thing. However, in the third evaluation, it factors in different areas based on the subtitles. So quality of work would look at job knowledge, accuracy, neatness, and thoroughness. Work characteristics, shows initiative and is resourceful, accepts new ideas and procedures. My recommendation at this time, although it's for your review, is I would select the third one for performance evaluation.
I think that's the best one.
Yeah.
I do too.
I like the specificity of the different areas and the fact that you're commenting on different areas rather than just a general comment.
I agree.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Any public comments or questions? No? Okay. So that's just a discussion item, so we can bring that on for action, or I guess you,
It's not necessary to bring it
Yeah,
to action,
yeah.
it's just to show you the three evaluation tools that we'll be using. We'll be using the third one.
so do our board policies specify, I mean, do we want to include this as an example in the board policy?
We can. It could be, you have board policy and then you have board procedures. So this would be under the procedures
Okay.
as the tool that will be used for evaluation. And I could bring that forward in June.
But this is actually fits with what our board policy is that has not been getting done. Because it does say specifically that there shall be a ratings
Yeah.
system with doing
Some-
evaluations.
But it doesn't identify the form, so we don't have to worry about updating
No,
that.
I think that that's perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. 11A?
Okay, 11A is where we have two visitors with us. It is administration's recommendation that the board consider the Dixon Public Library contract with the Solano County Library to provide library services. That does not mean that Solano County comes and they have ownership of the buildings or anything like that. That just means they provide the services, which in the past have been guided by an executive director. You have an opportunity to provide the Dixon community with library services by contracting with Solano County Library. They would include administrative services, automation services, technical services, and the telephone assistance center. The list of services would be further delineated in a memorandum of understanding once the board makes a decision to move forward with having Solano County provide the library services to the Dixon Public Library and the community. It is in no intent that any employee lose their position. They don't risk losing any of their positions. The transfer of services would enhance the training and skills of the library employees. The public would continue to receive the same superior services that our current employees are providing. They are the face of the Dixon Library, and that would not change. Staff from the county is here tonight to provide an overview of the benefits that the Dixon Public Library would receive by shifting its operation to Solano County. However, we do have to address prior to full implementation, and that's part of the package that I'll discuss, is address the unfunded liability of $2,010,950 for the CalPERS Classic and $88,848 for the PEPRA. We've communicated with CalPERS and I now have available the options that I didn't have when I wrote this up. The contracts that are currently open with different vendors, and then the public relations, informing the public of what this would look like. So if I can have the two individuals from the county, please step forward and provide a brief overview of the services that we would garner with this partnership.
Thank you, a little deja vu.
Yes.
Didn't you just say that?
Okay, I am Bonnie Katz. I'm the Director of Library Services for Solano County. We provided you not only with a draft budget to say, before we even started this, is this going to be financially feasible for the Dixon Public Library to contract with Solano County to run the library, plus then the additional benefits that you would partake of as being part of the county library, but still maintaining your separate legal entity. As you may recall from the last time I was here, this is a very, very similar relationship that we have with the Vacaville Public Library. The Vacaville Public Library is just like you are. They are a school district, library district, and they contract with Solano County to run their two facilities. But all the money stays in Vacaville, all the money stays in Dixon, you know, and the buildings are owned by the district. Your building stays with your district. So none of that changes. This is more of an agreement for operations and to do things on a larger scale and to benefit from the fact that you don't have to have all sorts of different individuals doing, you know, taking away from the public service part because we have such a high back of house ability to do administration, to do human resources, to do county council, you know, to process and order and deliver materials to the libraries. So, as our sheet says, you know, we see this as a win-win for both of us. We think we could enhance your public library service, and yet, as was spoken by your interim director, the face of the Dixon Public Library remains the same. The employees are the employees, and they are, you know, people, they are folks that the Dixon residents know. None of that changes. What changes is how the library operates. And then, like I said, enhancement of some of the services. So I believe Suzanne, who doesn't want to speak, but that's Suzanne Olowski, she's the assistant director,
Hi, Suzanne.
has handed you out, you know, some of our swag to show you what we do. And
Swag.
Dixon, yeah, swag, don't you like that?
Like it, oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
like that? Yeah, so we, you know, we've handed out some of the things that we do, that we publicize. You know, and our most recent thing is, in your packet, you'll see our summer reading program, and you'll see every single one of our branches in our 8-page brochure has a listing of what programs will be happening at that particular branch, what time, you know, and the audience. But some of the other things, we have all sorts of committees that we involve our staff with. We have enhanced staff training. We support our staff going to conferences, going to trainings. The county has a leadership academy that we put a lot of our staff through, ones who, you know, want to progress, want to move up in the system. So what we've included here is our summer reading, our Solano Kids Read, which is an annual reading for fun. Recognition of the sales tax. I mean, you know how important the sales tax is to your funding. And every year, we have a celebration called Promises Made, Promises Kept. Here's what we told you we would do with the sales tax money, and here's what we're doing. Tutor.com, online homework help, available 10 to 10, 7 days a week. We do a Women's History Month celebration, teen photography contest, Black History Month. So there's lots of programming, lots of training that goes on with all of our staff that this staff would then become a part of. So that's the commercial part. And then, of course, there's the budget part. And I believe we've sent you in your packet, you know, a budget which you've seen. And this is based on your 17-18 actuals. So when I'm looking at the revenues here and I'm looking at the expenses, not necessarily the expense part, but the revenue part, it basically says that even if you contracted with us, and yes, there would be charges for overhead for administration, technical services, automation, and our telephone assistance center, you still have $150,000 left in your contingency that don't need to use in terms of operating the library per se, in terms of staff. And this is all based on the information that I have included for staffing and hours, which is all negotiable. I mean, this was just a first take at it to make sure that we both could agree, both the county and the library could agree and make sure that there was enough funding to do what you need to do. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
So, in what you're, what you're proposing or what this looks like, it wouldn't have us lose any of our local control that we currently have, correct?
Correct. You are the governing board.
Yeah.
Just like the Vacaville Library District is the governing board.
Okay.
So in my role as the county librarian, now, they operate a little differently, but let's, you know, assume, The Vacaville Library Board passes the budget. Vacaville, they approve and they pass all of the things that need to be passed.
Sure.
None of that goes away. You're still the governing board for the Dixon Public Library. It's just operationally, we take care of
Okay.
all the running of the library.
Yeah, and I'm talking even more like, surplus property, if we want to,
That's
still,
yours.
still stays the same, like we have the same sort of process to,
Your policies, your procedures, all of that stays the same.
Okay.
What changes is your operations. So when I talk about a telephone assistance center, use that as an example. We, county library, all of what the calls come into one center so that staff who is out doing public service on the desk doesn't get interrupted by telephone calls. They are dealing with the folks that come into the library.
oh, yeah, okay.
So, and a lot of that stuff is like, sir, I need to renew my materials. Our folks in our telephone assistance center take care of that.
Okay,
Okay, so we feel it's better public service. I know I get somewhat annoyed when I go into a store and someone's helping me and the phone rings and they pick up the phone. It's like, hey, I'm here.
yeah, oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in front of you.
Customer service,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a
And we
lost
pride
art.
ourselves on customer service.
okay.
So, even though our policies will still be our policies, presumably since HR will be done through the county, if there are changes thought appropriate, those would be recommended to us. We'd still have someone saying, hey, this is outdated, you need to fix this, that sort of thing. And would you, I know we've discussed this in the past, but would you go through briefly again how this would benefit our collection in terms of sharing between?
So, yeah, our materials budget is about $2.3 million. That is shared across all of our branches. Same thing we do with Vacaville. We set aside X number of dollars, and when our materials come in, we know that that was purchased with Vacaville library funds. So if there's ever a divorce, we can say, hey, here's your, we have a list of all of your materials, but then you benefit with the rest of our materials. We do something called floating collections. So check out an item in Vacaville, and it's a Vacaville item, so to speak, but it gets returned in Dixon, it stays in Dixon. So the benefit of having those materials of what people want, and we move around stuff. This would also involve us making sure that you would have at least 5-day-a-week delivery through the county library, through the materials that are moving all around our libraries, because you would then be considered one of our libraries.
So if someone also wants to get a particular item that we don't have, but it's over in Vacaville or somewhere else, can it be requested and
Oh,
brought
sure,
over?
it's the same as you do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, none of that changes. I mean, one of the nice things and what makes it somewhat easier for us is the fact that you're already part of the Splash Consortium. So all of your materials are already in the catalog. All of your customer records are already in the catalog. It's just a matter of figuring out different distributions and let's say for bestsellers, and this is not going to be a good example, but I'll use it anyway. So instead of us buying 8 copies, one for each branch, we'd buy 9 copies. Make sure that, every one of our branches has that title. And then, whoever requests it, they usually always end up in one branch, and then we distribute them back.
And one other thing that I liked when you mentioned it before, would you tell us a little bit about how the phone tutoring works?
Sure, we contract with a firm called tutor.com. Is there a brochure in here on that?
It's in here.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it too.
Yeah. So basically, it is a telephone service where anybody from kindergarten, basically, through community college can call a number from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, and get homework help if they choose. I know when I had teenagers who were taking algebra and I could not remember how to do algebra, it's like, just go ask that person. And it's a tutor that's been vetted by the company. There is no way to pass personal information, and they help the student through the problem, or the parent through the problem who can't do the problem. So that's the way it works, and it's available. It's just part of one of the databases that the county library subscribes to, and we do not anticipate not renewing that. In fact, we've just signed another 3-year contract with tutor.com to continue that service, because it's so beneficial to the community.
Okay, let me ask you this. So we have some money set aside that is for doing some updates at our library. We also have some land, and we haven't quite got to that process of being able to update and remodel our library.
Right.
So how would you help us to facilitate that?
Just like we do with any other of our buildings that need to be upgraded. We are currently, this is a really good time, because we are currently have a request for proposal out to do, we did a 20-year master facility plan back in 2000. That's somewhat dated. Library service has changed greatly in the last 20 years. We are currently in the middle of a request for proposal, and what we will be doing, we will be looking at all of our libraries to see how we could provide services maybe differently, make the spaces more flexible, look at the systems to see if they need to be upgraded. And let me just back up a minute. We are a county library. In terms of the county library, we have 8 libraries. The county only owns one of those buildings. The other buildings are either owned, well, most of them are owned by the cities. One is a joint use school district library district. It's owned by the school district. We have the Vacaville Library District, who owns 2 buildings. However, we look at it as an overall county library, and therefore, we will look at all of our buildings to figure out what needs to be done. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, but just for anyone who might go back and watch this, but that money that we have set aside
It's
is
your money.
spent on our library.
Exactly. That is your money. We cannot commingle Dixon Library funds with county library funds. They have to be kept separate. It's the reason why you still maintain your Dixon Library Fund, for your Fund 426. And then when we would treat you as a division within the county library and do a budget. At the end of the budget year, we look and say, okay, how much did we actually spend? We go back to actuals, and anything that we didn't expend goes back to Dixon as a credit for the following year. Okay, so the funds are kept very separate. And just like Vacaville Library District, which is audited every 2 years, I'm assuming you are also audited every 2 years, and the auditor looks at that. They look and they say, well, have you kept the funds separate? And we say, yes, we have. And they say, yes, you have. So,
Okay. And then you help facilitate those audits as well.
the Vacaville Library District audit is done through the County Auditor's Division. They are independent, and I would assume if we could work out an agreement and Dixon contracts with the county library, then probably the county auditor, since you've already got all your financials there. Okay, you're just like, your Fund 426, Vacaville's Fund 427. So they already have all your records. So I'm assuming that we could work out an agreement, or you can work out an agreement with the county auditor, audit division, to do the audit.
Okay.
That makes most sense to me.
Okay.
Probably would save money also.
Yes, absolutely. Independent auditor's a little more expensive
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
what the county could charge.
And purchasing power, we would maybe save some money on purchasing and,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it all builds to an economy of scale. That's the first thing. And then the other thing that it builds to is not having to duplicate services. You wouldn't need somebody who does cataloging, because we have a whole division that does cataloging. You wouldn't need to go to an outside attorney possibly with a HR question or a contract that needs to be looked over. That's all done internally through, county council or our human resources, purchasing department.
Well, and with a full HR department to back, that probably will save definitely some money there as well.
Well, they do for us, they do all the recruitments and everything. There's an overhead charge from the county that comes back to the county library, but that's spread out, and I did include the overhead figures in here. That's spread out through all of the libraries. It's not just, and it's done on a percentage of your FTE. And that formula has been blessed many times by the county auditor, the overhead.
So you mentioned the master facility plan, 20 years. Is that common to do that long of an increment?
Yeah, and
I
then,
mean,
you know,
something
as
like-
you get down to the edges of the, 15 or so,
Yeah, because
kind of look at them and say, okay, it's time for us to do something different, and let's see what we've accomplished so far.
yeah, because you look at like the last 20 years, it's probably arguably the most change that's ever happened to a library system in a 20-year period.
When we did the master facility plan originally, we had 5 branches. Well, that's 6. One was in an office building. We now have 8. So the facility master plan was a guide for a couple of the jurisdictions to be able to build or relocate libraries
Okay,
to better, I mean, they were new buildings.
yeah, but not so much services and stuff.
No, it's mostly building
Yep, okay.
and how we do operations. And then, I'm looking at it from a view of how much flexibility can we build in to the space that we use, because we know services will change.
Oh, yeah,
Because, technology changes, and we need to be able to be adaptable with that.
with that interweb.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Would this be a good time before we go to public questions to talk about the CalPERS issue? Is that something?
I can talk about.
Okay, because I'm sure the county would probably have some input on that with its different options.
Yeah, basically, my direction from the county is we would like, if this worked out and we can work out the contract, we would like to say, okay, your employees would then become county employees, different classifications to fit into the the way we classify our folks. But, here's the big but we cannot absorb Dixon's unfunded liability. So there needs to be, a separation or a different agreement that says, okay, going forward, and you will see it if you look at these, the figures on page, if you look at page 3, you'll see under the 1210 line, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th line, you'll see a charge for retirement. That's retirement going forward for your employees. It's the budget part, and the pages are numbered on the top right-hand corner. So if you look at, like I said, if you look at the 1210 line, that's the retirement, what CalPERS will charge the county for retirement costs. And as we know, retirement costs are still going up. They have not leveled, probably 2022, 2023 is when CalPERS is predicting that they're going to level off. But they're climbing, and they're climbing high. So the way I would see it, there would be 2 agreements. One is the operations agreement, and then one is the agreement that says the unfunded liability for the personnel stays with the Dixon Public Library, and however PERS decides to have you pay it off, and I believe that's an option.
There are 3, pretty much
Excuse
what the options are on page 52. Yeah, it's 52, is Solano County Library would operate the Dixon Public Library, and a service agreement between the library, the county and Dixon would have to be reviewed by CalPERS, the memorandum of understanding, and within that, there would be a formal written agreement to ensure that we continue with the CalPERS agreement, contract that we currently have. And we currently have a contract that goes all the way to 2045 on page 69, and we would continue that schedule so long as we didn't end the contract. If we end the contract, if we say, well, we no longer want the contract, the only option the Dixon Public Library would have is to pay up the full amount or pay it off in 5 years. If we have an agreement with the county, we could continue to make the payments that we are currently making. And so,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I had a question, but go ahead.
okay, so we would continue with the current amortization schedule, which is on page 69 for the classic, and page page 96 in the PEPRA. On the bottom of both schedules, it does show, you know, if you were to pay it off in full, how much money would be saved. If we do not close the contract, it could continue to be paid. We just have to ensure that that's a written agreement that would be a line item, budget item, to ensure that we continue to pay the unfunded liability till 2045.
So then our actual retirement payment for our employees would be the 99,000 to the county plus the 35,000 for, if we were on the current amortization schedule for CalPERS plus the PEPRA payment of 455.
Yes,
So that would be our annual
yes,
payment.
yes.
Okay.
So this is another question that is off the subject of CalPERS. Do you guys use Granicus for your, and any of the system for board agendas or anything like that?
McCounty uses Legistar.
Okay,
Okay, that's how they, the county, does their agendas.
okay,
Okay, Vacaville, actually, the secretary to the school board actually puts together the agenda for the library board, but they only meet 4 times a year because they delegate the day-to-day, what's going on in the library to their library commission. Library commission does not have authority to pass anything. Everything has to be taken to the board, but the commission listens to all of the smaller things that are going on, so to speak.
okay.
Okay, but it is the board, the governing board, the school board sitting as the library board that passes the budget, passes any action items that have to happen. But it is, to answer your question, the agenda is generated by the school district, the Vacaville School District.
So the board meets 4 times a year,
Correct, the Vacaville Library Board.
right? And the Vacaville Library Commission, that's something that I guess we don't have a commission?
You had a commission and you no longer have a commission. That's probably not.
You don't want to
much
get
go.
John
Yeah,
going on
there's-
You
this.
didn't
we
wanna
wanna
go down
get
there.
John- Yeah, there's a whole history.
Yes, there is.
There's a history that at one point in time, this boardroom was in flames, literal flames over, almost literal.
It was,
Yeah.
it involved like the fetal position. and-
Yeah, flogging.
So we not be going that route, at least
I'm
as
not
of right now.
suggesting that we go that route.
No, no.
I just want information
Yes,
about.
there is,
Yep.
and still in our notes, it refers to a commission, in our board bylaws, it
Bylaws.
refers to a commission. But there was a lot of history
Only in
around,
Dixon is commission a 4-letter word.
that's true,
That's all I'm gonna say.
Commish.
yeah.
That's not even 4 letters, Jewel.
So I want to be clear to make sure I understand. So these 3 options on page 52,
Correct.
so,
What? Go ahead.
well, I guess, okay, so the option we're talking about we just put a separate line item in our agreement and all of that in the budget, is that option 1 or is that option 2?
That's option 2.
Okay. And then, so how would option 1, how would that look if we did that?
Okay, you'd continue to pay, you would not terminate the agreement with CalPERS. It would be a line item in the budget that's run by the county.
But we're paying CalPERS directly, or we're paying that to the
Yes.
county? Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other one is you terminate and you have to pay the full cost.
right,
And the third one is you make payments in 5 years.
okay,
But it's again a termination.
yeah. Okay, so if we terminated, then the employees fall under the county's retirement system, whatever
Well, we're still.
CalPERS.
It's CalPERS.
It's still the same.
So
It's
CalPERS.
still
The,
CalPERS.
the issue becomes, as in every governmental organization in the state, is the unfunded liabilities. If you saw Governor Newsom's budget that he just put out, he's putting a couple $2 billion to buy down the unfunded liabilities that we have for state employees. This is not an unusual thing. CalPERS, for whatever reason, is, and I get it, you know, they just don't have money as folks get older and retire to pay all the retirees. So because these were your employees prior to any agreement with the county, the Dixon Library District would be liable for paying off the unfunded liabilities. The good news, if there is good news in this, which there isn't, but the good news is what you have on that payment schedule stays. It doesn't increase because when, and if and when the employees become county employees, then going forward, the county picks up, you know, with, and you can see it in the budget, you know, as an employee cost, what the retirement costs will be going forward. We're talking about the stuff that's owed in the past
Sure.
for all the employees that you've had.
Yeah, so we're paying that one way or the other. It's just
Yeah,
determining which way we decide we can manage to do it.
Exactly,
Okay,
you know.
All right.
CalPERS isn't going to step back and say, oh, forget it, we're going to, you know, just do away with all debt for everybody.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
okay. Any other board questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? Come on up.
Good evening. My initial reaction to this was, I think there's little, if any, public awareness of what you're considering tonight. And I think that there needs to be more outreach to the public before you make a decision. I don't subscribe to either of the Dixon newspapers. I look at them occasionally when I go to the library. I'm not sure that there's been any notification to the public of what you're considering. So I would hope, there have been controversies in the past. I would hope that this wouldn't be one of them, but there has been a lot of involvement by the public on certain issues in the past, like the commission issue, because I understand, I appreciate that Mr. Gabby understands Dixon seems to have a real interest in maintaining local control.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate that you get that. And also that the board not relinquish their control. That was part of the issue with the commission fiasco, I guess I would call it. So some of my other questions I think have been answered. I was concerned about property, and I'm a little unclear about who would be maintaining the current property. I think it's clear to me that any decisions regarding the Miller Building or whatever, you know, is left undone, those would come through the board. And but the maintenance, I know that I was one of the people, and there were a number of us who were very, very concerned about the Carnegie, and we would really want to make sure that that was maintained. And then another question, I serve on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and so I wanted to be clear that the money generated in Dixon stays in Dixon, and I think that that's clear. My last concern, at least at this point, is with our staff. On page, I think it's page 34, it says that as it stands now, they're not in any jeopardy of losing their positions. I know I've heard some reassurances that that wouldn't happen, but What's written is, as it stands now, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with that. The staff has been through so much turmoil. Many of them have been so incredibly loyal that I want their best interests looked at after. So that's what I have to say for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
input. So I think, could we address the building maintenance question? I think is that one of the line items in the services that the county would have people to help us with the building maintenance?
You're talking about the Carnegie?
Well, I'm just talking in general with the library
Yeah,
itself. I mean, upgrading the buildings would be a different matter.
Yeah, upgrading the buildings is a totally different story. But in terms of regular maintenance, depending on if you have folks that you use now, we would continue to use them. The instances I can give are, City of Vacaville maintains the 2 Vacaville libraries for us. Most of the cities have maintenance folks that maintain the city, because they are city buildings. It's a little different when you have a district building. But I'm sure that whatever maintenance needs to be done will be done. We're not going to operate unsafe buildings, and that comes out of the budget that Dixon has, and it is Dixon, money that pays for it.
Okay.
Okay.
And in terms of the employees, I know we've discussed in the past, I think, when we met, it looks like they would all fit into positions, and then depending on how the county titles and pays their different positions, it might actually mean raises to some of the employees.
Yes.
Yeah. But as it is now, we don't anticipate and don't want to let any employees go that still
No,
want a
and that
job.
is not our intent. Our intent is, again, your folks are the face of the Dixon Public Library, and we need to maintain that.
We appreciate that.
Any other board questions or comments? Any other public questions or comments? Yeah, come on up. Thank you.
So being on the staff, I have some procedural questions, not only from me, but from other staff that couldn't be here. One of the main big issues, we're talking about maintenance, but we have no space. We have no space to fit the current materials that we have. We have no space to have programming. There are some areas in the library which I don't believe are ADA compliant anymore because we are trying to cram so much in. And the literacy program, like I've said, I think last month, takes over the library a lot. And we just don't have room for people or things or programs. So it concerns me, one of the concerns from my coworkers was, well, that's great that they're gonna do our processing of materials, but then when they send it to us, where is it gonna go? And these floating collections also concern me in that manner because where are those gonna go if somebody returns them to us where they checked them out in Vacaville?